Hi, I'm Matt from All About Drink.
And I'm Tom from All About Drink.
And today we're going to review this whiskey, the Green Spot Chateau Montelena cask.
Okay, what's so special about this, Matt?
Well, this is a take on a previous whiskey that has been made before, the Green Spot, made by Michelin Sons, or I suppose more so owned by Michelin Sons, and made by Middleton in County Cork. They've been producing this whiskey since about the 1850s, the original, but now they have gone ahead and aged it in a cask from one of the wine suppliers that they actually import from. So I suppose we need to give a bit of background to this whiskey. Michelin Sons, they first set up in 1805 in Dublin. A gentleman called Mr. Mitchell came over from the UK and managed to find a really nice property in Dublin. So he set up shop, and he originally started baking cakes, importing port and selling it by the bottle, and buying in tea and selling it to the gentry of Dublin. So the Michelin Sons vintners, they started producing this whiskey, and it was a big success. And it's a pure pot still, or a single pot still whiskey in style, which is similar to, say, a single malt, but for the fact that they use malted barley and unmalted barley. And the reason that this actual whiskey came to be was because when the English were actually occupying Ireland, they put an exorbitant tax on malted barley, which made it almost impossible to actually make money from whiskey production, that hundreds of distilleries closed around Ireland.
Including this one in Dublin, yeah?
Including this. They actually went out of production in, say, the 1960s, 1970s, when the Irish whiskey industry almost went defunct. And that's when all of the last few distilleries, Jameson and Bow Street, Powers and John's Lane, Middleton and Cork, they all accumulated to become the Irish distillers.
Okay, which is more or less based in Cork.
Yes, absolutely. Bushmills were involved, but they thought just because of the geographical gap between them that it wasn't feasible to move all of their production down to Middleton. Okay. So they gave their support, but still stayed separate to that actual company. Then, with the revival of Irish whiskey recently, there was a real call for pot still whiskies again to combat the single malt scotches that were being produced and were absolutely dominating the industry. Once upon a time, Irish whiskey would have accounted for anything up to 70% of whiskey consumed globally.
But isn't it, there was initially a harsher taste of pot stilled whiskey, and the Americans didn't like it during Prohibition. Wasn't that part of the decline?
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that we had fairly primitive distilling equipment at that time would have absolutely made quite a harsh whiskey. But I suppose the pure pot still, it actually started taking over as an after-dinner tipple. Even in the UK, pot still whiskies were favoured, and Irish pot still whiskies were favoured for an after-dinner drink. It was actually almost replacing brandy.
Okay, so there's a bit of a reinvention of the pot still whiskey, or revitalisation of it, or
absolutely.
Demand for pot still rather than side-by-side still. Is that the alternative?
Yes, the column stills, which they're massive, tall, cylindrical stills, literally continuous. It'd be grain, so corn or maize that would go into the production. Makes a much lighter style whiskey, and it's predominantly used for blending, whereas there is absolutely no corn or grain in this.
Okay.
So yeah, we're going to taste it now. Just to give you a couple of characteristics of pot still whiskies and how they taste. This is triple distilled, so 3 stills side by side. The more you distill a spirit, the softer it gets, which Irish whiskey is quite well known for. However, this actual style of whiskey, pure pot still, is very, very punchy. This whiskey is traditionally aged in bourbon barrels and Oloroso sherry, which gives you a real spicy character, especially coming from the pot still. You get a lovely amount of spices coming through it, and classically red apples and ripe pear. But with the addition of the aging in Chateau Montelena Zinfandel casks, you get some lovely berry qualities coming through, even bits of marshmallow and cranberry, which is purely down to the finishing for, say, the final year in the Chateau Montelena barrel. So you're looking at about an age between 8 and 11 years.
So this is one of the most hugely influenced whiskies by the American style, or not style, but because it's originally in American bourbon barrels, and then it's in the Chateau Montelena. Is that the correct way to pronounce it?
Yeah.
Or it's originally, and then it's in the Chateau Montelena barrels. So this is a big American-Irish cousin.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I suppose the States would have been unheard of up until about 1976, when Chateau Montelena actually entered the Jugement de Paris, which is like the Olympics for wine, essentially. It's a massive blind tasting where Chateau Montelena entered their 1973 vintage of Chardonnay into the 1976 Jugement de Paris and absolutely wiped all the Burgundian producers of Chardonnay in a blind tasting. And it really put the States on the map with regards to, I suppose, international and global recognition of their actual skills. So it's great to see the Irish and American connection.
Okay. Well, this will be aged probably for maybe 3 or 4 years in ex-bourbon barrels first.
Yeah.
And then the Oloroso sherry barrels, and then
Chateau Montelena to finish off, to really round it out.
Okay, so it's gone from America to Portugal to America.
Essentially, yes.
And Irish at
and
the end of the day.
stopped off in Ireland, just to finish it off.
Okay, so we're going to taste this, or are we going to...
absolutely.
Okay. Right.
Now, so let's get into tasting it.
The fun
bit.
bit.
Like the smell. Exactly, that's right.
So what are we looking for here? What are the characteristics of the nose?
Pot still whiskies always give a really high viscosity in the whiskey, and you can see that it's almost syrupy. On the nose, straight away, loads of spice. A real gingery aspect, which you're always going to get in pot still whiskies. But because this whiskey is actually non-chill filtered as well, it's 46%.
Right.
So it's going to be a bit more powerful, a bit more punchy, and the alcohol molecules are going to be really dense. So we're going to have a smell, have a taste, and then we're going to add some water.
Okay.
And we'll just cut that alcohol layer.
Okay. I like that.
It's a lovely heat.
Yeah.
Tons of spice. You can definitely see the Zinfandel cask. There's a real blackberry kind of taste off it. Real berry taste. It's quite unusual. It's quite dry too.
Yeah.
Which you're rarely seeing actually in a whiskey. And that could actually be the tannin from the wine having an impact on the actual whiskey itself.
Right.
Cool, so we'll try it with a bit of water. As I said, literally not even 10 drops. You're going to have a little...
that was 11, Matt.
Oh, yeah. I was never good at counting. Definitely better at drinking.
So the additional water, it opens up the oils in the whiskey? Is that what?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Need to give it a really good swirl.
Right, so somebody told me one time that you should always add at least a teaspoon of water to whiskey to open it up, but I mean, is that rule of thumb, or is it just somebody else's preference?
Totally down to preference as well. Like, some people add an ice cube in, but then again, if you add an ice cube, you can't really control the level of distillation, or sorry, of dilution even.
Right.
I would even use a pipette.
Okay.
If you want to be really, really anal about it, I suppose. just so you don't, if you water it down too much, you're gonna waste it, and it's just gonna be too diluted.
Right. So we're looking for a different flavor, not a different flavor, but more. It should open up more.
Absolutely, you're gonna get more tertiary and secondary flavor profiles that are hidden because there's a chemical reaction between the water and the lipids or the fats in the whiskey.
Okay.
And even when you pour the water in, you can see almost like legs on the side of a glass.
Right.
Actually, inside the whiskey, are dropping, say, water into olive oil, and it just it pushes out all that alcohol vapor and just reveals a totally different.
Well, let's see what
flavor.
it's revealed.
Absolutely.
It's a lot softer.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot easier to pick out the flavours.
100%.
I mean, I suppose we've cut the alcohol a little bit on it by diluting it, so it's not as there isn't as strong a burn.
Absolutely. I'm actually starting to get that kind of marshmallow flavour. It's very creamy as well, very mouth coating. Because they actually say that 35% alcohol is the optimum ABV to get to that your tongue can actually taste the most amount of flavours from.
That's really nice.
Absolutely.
Really nice.